Hello, a day with Caleb. On this episode, we are going to show the mummy, the character the mummy, throughout the years in film. So I hope you're ready. We got our list here. Obviously, the most iconic being the Brendan Fraser franchise, but there were other movies where the mummy was featured. So, hope you're ready. Let's strap in and talk about the mummy throughout the years in cinema, in film history.
Caleb.
We start off, of course, with the Universal Studios classic monster, the film that kind of started it all. In 1932, The Mummy, and obviously iconic film with the iconic actor Boris Karloff. And then we get to those sequels, and in the description, they're not really sequels per se, but kind of soft reboots. Different actors played the mummy. It wasn't Boris Karloff. But in 1940, we get to The Mummy's Hand. And then a few years later, in 1942, we get The Mummy's Tomb. Then, like clockwork, 2 years later after that, we get The Mummy's Ghost. And that same year, in 44, we get The Mummy's Curse. So that is 4 sequels to The Mummy. Then we end the Universal Classic Monsters with Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, and this was 11 years later after The Mummy's Curse, and 20 plus years after the original. So 55, the first one was in 32. Then 2 years after that, we get Pharaoh's Curse in 1957, followed 2 years after that with a Hammer Film Productions, the 1959 The Mummy. Then we skip a few decades. We come into the 1980s with 1981 The Sphinx. And that, a decade goes by almost. Then we get to 1993 with The Mummy Lives. Comment down below if you know if there was a sequel or not to The Mummy Lives, or if it was just The Mummy Lives. Then 1997, we get a couple of them, starting first with Disney's Under Wraps. And then that same year, also in 1997, we get Bram Stoker's The Mummy. Bram Stoker, of course, created Dracula. I guess he also did The Mummy, but he was more famous for his Dracula. Then, of course, we get to my obsession, the 1999 masterpiece, The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and directed by Stephen Sommers. Then, a year later, in 2000, we get a sequel to Bram Stoker's The Mummy with Bram Stoker's The Mummy 2. And I need to look that one up and find it, because I do have the Bram Stoker's Mummy. That would be cool to see. Speaking of sequels, we get a sequel to the 99 Mummy with 2001 The Mummy Returns, which is also a great film in the series, in the franchise. Then that same year, we got the Mummy animated series based on the characters in the first two Mummy films, Brendan, John Hannah, Rachel, and then the kid Alex, of course. Then in 2006, we get Curse of King Tut's Tomb. Then in 2008, we get Curse of the Sphinx. And that same year, we get Riddles of the Sphinx. Or it could be the same film. It was kind of hard to determine which was which. Then we get the third film in the franchise, Brendan Fraser, The Mummy Tomb of the Dragon Emperor in 2008. Then in 2014, we get Day of the Mummy, we get American Mummy, and we get Pyramid. Also in 2014, we get The Mummy Resurrected. And in 2021, we get The Mummy Resurrection. Now, it could be the same film, or it could be multiple films with Mummy and Resurrection or Resurrected. I do not know. In 2022, we get the sequel to Under Wraps, the garbage fire that is Under Wraps 2. And then we end 2023 and this Mummy in film video with The Mummies, which is an animated movie called The Mummies, released in 2023.